What if the greatest shift you could make in your financial life didn't start with budgeting, investing, or earning more, but with surrender? Hi, I'm Rob West. We don't usually think of surrender as a financial word, but Jesus does. Today we're talking about the life-changing truth that God owns everything and how that single conviction can transform the way we live, give, and steward our resources. Then it's on to your calls at 800-525-7000. This is Faith and Finance Live. Biblical wisdom for your financial decisions. When we talk about money, we tend to ask familiar questions. How much do I have? How much do I need? Am I doing well? These are common questions, but they're not the first questions Scripture asks. From the very beginning, Scripture establishes God as the owner. Before humanity ever managed a garden or named a creature, God formed, filled, and ruled creation. Psalm 24:1 later declares it plainly, "The earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof." Simply put, God is the owner and we are the stewards. For many of us, that's a familiar idea, but familiarity doesn't always mean surrender. We may believe God owns the universe, but we instinctively act as if we built our lives with our own hands. We say things like, "I worked for this," or "I earned this," but Scripture adds a crucial line. It is He who gives you the power to get wealth. That's in Deuteronomy 8:18. Even our ability to work is a gift from God. Jesus picks up this idea in the parable of the talents in Matthew 25. The master entrusts resources to 3 servants. 2 invest courageously. 1 buries what he's been given out of fear. When the master returns, he doesn't praise the servants for increasing his net worth. He praises their faithfulness. That's a key detail. God doesn't measure stewardship the way the world measures results. The world defines success by outcomes. God defines success by trust and faithfulness. If God owns everything, then we are not owners. We're managers. The Greek word Scripture uses for steward, oikonomos, means household manager. A steward manages resources they didn't generate for purposes they didn't define under a master they serve. That may sound restrictive at first, but in reality, it's freeing. Because if I'm not the owner, then I'm not the ultimate provider, and I'm not the ultimate protector. Like Ron Blue always says, if God owns it all, you can't lose anything. Ownership carries weight. Stewardship carries trust. And when we truly embrace stewardship, everyday choices become opportunities for worship. Budgeting becomes an act of aligning our desires with God's priorities. Giving becomes a reflection of the generosity we've received. Planning becomes obedience instead of anxiety. Even investing becomes a way of multiplying what belongs to the Lord, not to secure independence from Him. There's a famous line from the Puritan preacher Thomas Watson. What we keep, we may lose. What we give to God is kept forever. It's a reminder that ownership is temporary, but stewardship is eternal. We brought nothing into the world, Paul says, and we can take nothing out of it. That reality isn't meant to discourage us, it's meant to liberate us. When we stop clutching what we cannot keep, we're free to invest in what we can never lose. Of course, this raises the practical question, if God owns everything, what does He expect of us? Well, Jesus answers it simply. One who is faithful in very little is also faithful in much. Faithfulness is not about size, it's about surrender, and surrender always begins in the heart. When we embrace the conviction that God owns it all, we gain 2 things the world can't offer: humility and hope. Humility because we stop boasting in our own accomplishments. Hope because we realize we're not carrying the burden alone. God equips, God guides, and God provides. So let me ask you, where is God inviting you to shift from being an owner to a steward? Is it in your giving, your planning? Is it your savings, your lifestyle? Or maybe in the quiet belief that your security depends more on markets than on the God who owns the cattle on 1,000 hills? Stewardship isn't about God getting something from you. It's about God doing something in you. It reorders the heart so that money serves its proper place, not as a master, but as a tool. If this idea resonates with you, that God owns it all and stewardship begins with surrender, I'd love for you to explore it further in my devotional, Our Ultimate Treasure, a 21-day journey to faithful stewardship. It's available now at faithfi.com/shop. You can order a copy for yourself or place a bulk order for your church or small group. That's faithfi.com/shop. All right, your calls are next. The number, 800-525-7000. This is Faith and Finance Live. We'll be right back.
The opinions offered during this program represent the personal or professional opinions of the participants, given for informational purposes only. Any information provided is not intended to replace advice from a financial, medical, legal, or other professional who understands your specific situation.
Hey, thanks for joining us today on Faith and Finance Live. I'm Rob West. In just a moment, we'll begin taking your calls and questions. So if you'd like to get in on the conversation today, whether you're thinking about your budget, debt repayment, giving wisely, maybe it's investing for you, call right now, 800-525-7000. Speaking of investing, Bob Dahl will be by in our final segment today, and Bob will weigh in on the markets. A lot moving the markets today. Oil moving around today just based on what's happening with Iran. Trump saying Iran will pay for the killing of the U.S. service members over the weekend. That means more escalation as a result of that retaliation. We're seeing oil prices reacting today. Overall, the market off, not significantly. The NASDAQ basically flat. The S&P 500 down modestly. The Dow Jones off 300 points, still less than 1%, close to 0.5%. Nevertheless, Bob Dahl will weigh in on what's moving the markets more broadly related to our economy. We'll talk about earnings. We'll talk about the Fed and much more that's coming up in our final segment. Between now and then, though, we'd like to take your questions. So that number to get in on the conversation, 800-525-7000. You can call right now. Just to mention, we started with this big idea earlier in the program here in the first segment, God owning it all. And you might say, yeah, I've heard that before. And it's true. We talk about it a lot. I will say it is something worth revisiting. It is the fundamental idea with regard to biblical money management. We have to start there because it puts our place as steward, which is critical because that really colors and shapes everything we do related to money management, because stewards have responsibilities, not rights, and stewards are accountable. Stewards live with an eternal perspective, and we're faithful even in the small things. Remember Luke 16:10, one who is faithful in a very little is also faithful in a much. Stewards hold loosely and give generously and don't take credit like the rich fool did in the parable that Jesus tells, where he takes credit for his success. He fails to acknowledge God's provision. But when we accept our role as stewards and all of those things are true, we honor God as the true owner of all we have. And that mindset transforms how we approach our finances and, frankly, our lives, which leads to greater purpose and responsibility and joy. Because, and here's the big why, how we handle money reflects our commitment to Christ and our trust in Him of all things and for all things. And so just keep that in mind today. I know it's something that I need to allow to wash over me, and I know that's true for all of us as we think about this high calling we've all received, and that is a steward of everything God has entrusted to us, but that certainly includes His resources. Each day on this program, we want to remind you of that, take you back into God's Word, but also get intensely practical because we know you have questions, things you're wrestling with. So let's dive into those right now. We're going to begin in Ohio today. Gordon, how can I help?
Yeah, thank you for taking my call. So the question I have is, I've got a 401k plan, and I was thinking about investing part of it in real estate. The particular real estate I was considering would have given me like $1,600 a month income, and I would have left after I took money out of my 401k about $125,000 left. So I'm just wondering if that's a good idea. I'm of the retirement age. I could retire. I'm actually over 70. I'm still working and collecting Social Security as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So how much would you have? I know you said you'd have a little over 100,000 left in the 401k. How much would you pull out to make this purchase?
About 175.
About 175. Okay. And you've already identified this property?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, the challenge is it would require a distribution unless you do a self-directed IRA. Now, I'll get to that in a moment. I mean, real estate can be a great wealth building tool. The problem is, although you wouldn't have that 10% early withdrawal penalty, you're going to trigger a massive ordinary income tax bill. And so you could lose a significant portion of your retirement savings before you ever buy the property. And then, perhaps even bigger than that over time, you're going to give up that continued tax-deferred growth of those retirement assets. So although I like real estate as a part of a diversified plan, I generally wouldn't recommend, draining or at least cutting in half, perhaps, or maybe a little more than that, 2/3 of a 401k, just because of the tax advantages you're giving up and the big tax bite that you'll have on the front end. Now, the other option is a self-directed IRA, which is simply where you would roll the 401k to a self-directed IRA custodian. This is not your typical Schwab or Fidelity. These are specialized custodians. But as soon as you get it into a self-directed IRA, then that does allow you to invest in other types of assets beyond stocks and bonds, including real estate. Now, what would happen is the property would be owned by the IRA, not you personally. You can't live in it, use it. That's fine because this is a rental, but also you can't personally manage it. And so you would have to hire a property manager because you can't be the one to personally collect the rent or perform repairs, those kinds of things. So a third-party property manager would have to do all of that. All expenses would be paid from the IRA. All rental income goes back into the IRA, but you preserve that tax deferral. But give me your thoughts on all that.
Well, the other thing is that I didn't mention is right now, so a couple of years ago, my 401k did really well, and I turned it into a cash fund as an added information so that it isn't earning a whole lot right now based on it's probably losing with inflation.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, but we don't want to get in a binary trap, which is basically where we say, okay, do we want to leave it in cash in the 401k or do we want to buy real estate? Well, what about the third option? We leave it in the 401k, but we reinvest it into a properly diversified portfolio that's appropriate for your age and risk tolerance, maybe even include some real estate investment trusts if you want real estate exposure, or we roll it out to an IRA, and now we're not limited to that small menu of investments inside the 401k, but any stock, bond, mutual fund, ETF could be purchased at that point. But again, we're missing out on the big tax bill, which, is probably going to affect 2 years from now your IRMA, your Medicare premium on top of the federal and potentially state income tax, and then you've lost all the tax deferral moving forward. Does that make sense?
And what's the IRMA?
Yeah, that's the additional premium you pay 2 years after you have a greater level of income. The Medicare looks at your income from 2 years ago and then adds a premium to your Medicare premium on top of it. Could be, $200 a month or more that you would get hit with because you have a spike in income. They add more a premium on top of your existing Medicare premium.
Well,
so there's just a lot of implications here, and so I would love for you to find a way to do this without pulling it out of the 401k. Gordon, hope that gives you a few things to think about. Thanks for your call. We'll be right back. Hey, thanks for joining us today on Faith and Finance Live. I'm Rob West. Listen, Faith and Finance is listener supported, which just simply means we bring you this program each day as a result of your generous support. And as we're beginning a new fiscal year starting July the 1st, we're already just slightly behind. And so not a big deal. We would just invite you, if you love the program, to jump in. And whether it's a one-time gift or becoming a Faith Fi partner monthly at $35 a month or $400 a year, just know that it goes a long way toward helping us bring you all of these resources and this broadcast each day. And so if you love the program, maybe you listen regularly and you'd like to support the ministry, just head to faithfi.com/give. That's faithfi.com/give. And thanks in advance. Let's jump back into the phones. By the way, a few lines open at 800-525-7000. If you have a question, call right now. Let's go to Cheyenne, Wyoming, and welcome Debbie. Go ahead.
Thank you. My husband died this last January, and I'm a beneficiary on his IRA and his 401k. Are there going to be any taxes that I'm going to have to pay on those?
Yeah, Debbie, I'm so sorry that your husband passed away, and I'm glad you called. If it's a traditional 401k and IRA, inheriting them is not a taxable event. However, future withdrawals are going to be taxed as ordinary income. So as a spouse, what would typically happen is you would roll them into your own IRA, so they become your IRA in your name, and therefore it's treated as if it's your retirement account. And then the key question would just be, when you need the money, as you pull it out, and you'd have flexibility on that. At some point, you're going to be subject to your own required minimum distribution where you have to start taking it out based on the IRS table and a factor that they create based on life expectancy. But it's not a taxable event, the fact that you've received it. It's only going to be taxable as you take a distribution.
Okay, that sounds good.
Yes, ma'am.
Then on the 401k, he borrowed money out of that 401k in 2025 and was making payments.
Yes.
It was supposed to be for 5 years, but
I see.
So am I going to have to claim that as income, or will I have to pay it back?
Yes. So typically what happens there is any unpaid 401k loan becomes due when either employment ends or upon death. And so if it isn't repaid according to the plan's rules, which, if there was a 5-year runway and we hadn't completed it, then the outstanding balance, the amount that was still owed, is typically treated as a taxable distribution to your husband's estate or on his final tax return, not as a debt to you as the beneficiary. But in either case, it would, with joint assets, you would be the one likely to pay it. But essentially, at his death, it does need to be repaid. And so that would be a taxable distribution. So I would work with your CPA or tax preparer when you're filing your husband's final tax return or on your own return to handle that outstanding balance appropriately.
Okay. All right. I was just wondering because he borrowed that in 2025 and then he never even got 1 year's worth. He was supposed to pay it back in 5 years, but he didn't even get 1 year's paid back. So
I see.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Well, I appreciate your call. Let me do this. I'd love to send you a book, Debbie. There's a wonderful, sweet lady that her husband passed away, Bob Neff. He was a big part of Moody Radio. And Miriam, his widow, wrote a book called Wise Women Managing Money, specifically for widows now taking over the family finances, and just as an encouragement, but also offering some practical assistance. I'd love to send you a copy of that book, Debbie. I think it'll be a blessing to you and hopefully very helpful to you as well. So if you would stay on the line, we'll get your information and we'll get it right out to you, okay?
Okay. Thank you very kindly.
Absolutely, Debbie. Lord bless you too. Bye-bye. Let's go to Alabama. Hi, Dale. Go ahead.
Hey, Rob. Thank you. Love your show. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
My brother and I own an S Corp together, and we own stock in this company. It's a small company. My brother just took retirement at 70. I'm 65 and considering. My question is, we're going to continue working some. Can we pay ourselves in a dividend as opposed to just income?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great question, and this comes up a lot with S-corps, and the IRS has a clear rule. If you're providing meaningful services to the business, then you generally need to pay yourself a reasonable salary first, and then you can take distributions. So essentially, the salary, the W-2 wages, are required if you're actively working in the business. Those are subject to payroll taxes, Social Security, and Medicare, and they have to be, quote, reasonable. And you have to be able to defend that based on your role, your duties and experience, and what someone else would be paid for the same work. And then the distributions, often called dividends, can be taken after paying that reasonable salary. Those are not subject to payroll taxes, which is why they're, a nice benefit of an S-corp. They still pass through as the owner's tax return and are reported on your return, but you're not subject to those payroll taxes, which is a nice perk, but you do have to make sure that it's beyond what would be considered by the IRS to be reasonable compensation as salary.
That makes sense. I was curious about that. And just a quick question. At me at 65, if I take retirement, I know whatever I make goes against what I would get because I'm not at full retirement age of 67. Does that money, if they subtract money from my distribution or my what I would get monthly, does that money come back to me at some time down the future?
Not necessarily. No. The only reason you would get some sort of credit for it is if you replaced one of your high 35 years of earnings because you're making more now than you did with one of those high 35 years, and therefore it knocked one of those out and replaced it, and you're going to end up getting more. That's really the only benefit. I understand it's somewhat frustrating that you're continuing to pay into Social Security even while you're collecting it. That's just the way the system works. So you don't get a direct benefit, but you may be rewarded if you replace a high 35. Dale, thanks for your call. We'll be right back. Well, as you probably heard, we have a big celebration going on here at Moody Radio. That's right. July the 28th, just 8 days from now, is our 100-year anniversary for this historic radio ministry. Now, as we go beyond 100 years, we're looking forward to the future as we turn our attention to Moody Global Media, as we have this major strategic expansion into digital multi-platform ministry, really designed to scale gospel reach and remain culturally relevant and significantly increase global spiritual impact. It's an exciting vision, and we're praying that God would allow us through these new technologies to reach as many as 100 million people every week by 2030. It is just incredible. And I know if you're listening today, you've probably been listening a long time. Maybe you just found us last week, but perhaps you're someone who's been around for quite a while and you love Moody Radio and you're excited about this new expanded vision of Moody Global Media. I'd love to invite you to support this work as we see the unchanging and unstoppable gospel reach beyond perhaps where it ever has before to more and more people through this incredible ministry. And one of the ways to support that effort is through a qualified charitable distribution. You know, we talk about it a lot. A lot of people that have an IRA that are over 70 and a half have more than they will ever use in that IRA, and they're planning to give it away when they pass away, but also know that they could put it to work now. And through the qualified charitable distribution, it's a wonderful opportunity without any tax whatsoever to go straight from your IRA to a ministry, a 501c3, doing work in the name of Jesus. And if you'd like to support this expanded vision through Moody Global Media, we would love to invite you to connect with our team at Moody Stewardship. Just go to moodystewardship.org. You'll find all the information there. The team would love to come alongside you and tell you how you can be a part of this incredible ministry. Again, that website, moodystewardship.org. Coming up in the next segment, Bob Dahl stops by. We'll get to Bob's take on the markets. But in the meantime, let's head right back to the phones. Dan is in Indianapolis. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you for taking my call. I'm calling because I have a question regarding credit scores and credit cards. My wife had a credit card. She passed away. My name was on it, so I was using that same credit card. A few years ago, I got one that was under my own name. From a credit score perspective, is it beneficial or a good move to have more than one credit card, or is one credit card suitable?
Yeah, it really is suitable, especially since you've likely got quite a history of credit that sits on your credit report that's benefiting you. You know, the key really is just to stay focused on the fundamentals, especially in this season of life where you're likely not out looking for a lot of new credit. Now, maybe you're going to buy a car, along the way, and you don't have the cash to buy it outright, and so you're going to take out a small loan. So it's, of course, nice to keep a good credit history, but those fundamentals would consist of paying every bill on time, keeping your balances low, ideally paying it in full each month, and making sure if you do use it for budgeted items and you wait until the end of the cycle, you actually might be charging up above 30% of the limit, which is actually going to start to pull your score down. So one strategy is to actually pay it before the end of the cycle rather than waiting until the due date for that reason. But as long as you pay your bills on time, keep those balances low, avoiding, using too much of your available credit, and then keeping older accounts when possible, especially if they don't have an annual fee, since a longer credit history can help your score. And when you close an account, often not only is that account closed, but it's eliminated from the history of your credit that's being seen by these credit algorithms. But I would say if you have one well-managed card that has some history to it, and you're an active user of that card for maybe a small budgeted item that you pay in full, that's about all you need to do, Dan. I certainly wouldn't pay one dime of interest for the sake of a good credit score, because there's no reason that you shouldn't have a score in the high 700s, which is going to qualify you for, the very best rates and terms for just about any loan by just following those best practices. Does that make sense?
No, that makes sense. So basically, if I just have one card, which I have right now, I don't use it every month, but I do use it periodically, and just make sure I pay it off every month. That would probably be sufficient data that they would have from a credit card or credit score perspective. And if, like you said, I needed to get a different vehicle and needed to get a small loan, that I'd probably have enough credit history there to suffice.
That's right. On top of the other history that's showing there from the older accounts that you've already, paid off from years gone by, other cars or homes, things like that. But yes, I would say that's true. That one active account that you're using regularly for a budgeted item, keeping the balance low, always paying it on time, is the kind of history that you're going to need to keep that score right where you need it to be for anything you could need it for in the future.
Okay. Well, that's helpful. I like the idea of just sticking with one credit card. That's easier than messing with, multiple bills every month, or more than one bill a month, or one notice a month, that type of thing. But so thank you for your input.
Absolutely, Dan. And I would just concur with that and add to it, one card is not only simpler, but it's only one account that has the ability to be compromised. Because remember, if you have a card that's active, even if you're not using it, and somebody compromises that account, you've got to stay on top of it just to make sure that that doesn't happen. And so by, paring it down to one, there's really only one active account that you need to be monitoring, just given the rise of theft and fraud taking place right now. So hopefully that helps, Dan. We appreciate your call today. God bless you, sir. Christine is in Illinois. Go ahead. Christine, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here.
Great. How can I help?
Thank you for taking my call. Yes, my niece has a 521 plan where she's the beneficiary. And we were talking about rolling it over to a Roth IRA since she's not going to need it for college anymore. But we were told that the owner of the account needed to be the owner for 5 years before it gets rolled over into an Roth IRA. And recently, her mother had passed away, and the account changed ownership from her mother to me. Does that affect this, where we have to reset the clock to go another 5 years?
Yeah. So here's the key requirements. There's a lot of moving pieces here, and it has changed recently. But Secure Act 2.0, the law change a few years ago, is what's made it possible to roll the unused 529 funds into a Roth. Now, the 529 itself has to have been open for at least 15 years. The Roth has to be in the name of the beneficiary, in this case, your niece. the rollovers are limited to the annual Roth IRA contribution limit each year, and the beneficiary has to have earned income in order to be able to do it. And then there's a lifetime cap of $35,000. And then contributions made within the last 5 years would not be eligible to be rolled over. So yes, we do have this 15-year requirement. We've got the 5-year requirement, and then we've also got the $35,000 cap and the earned income test. Now, regarding the ownership change, changing the account owner from her mother to you generally should not prevent the rollover. The more important questions are whether the account itself has met the 15-year requirement and whether your niece is still the beneficiary. There's still a few questions that remain on all of this, and so you're probably going to want to check with a CPA, but also, make sure you meet that 5-year rule as well. Stay on the line. We'll go over that a bit more. We'll be right back. Well, a lot to talk about in the markets today, although the market really flat for the most part today. A lot going on in the Middle East as the U.S. Retaliating against the casualties from the weekend. Bob Dahl's here to help us process all of this. Bob, as we back up for a minute, before we even get into the geopolitical issues, we did get a really nice inflation reading. Is there anything to make of that beyond a single reading?
Not really, Rob. Obviously, it was good news, so we don't want to dismiss it. And it begins to tell us there's some parts of inflation that are getting a bit better. Notably, on that report was the decline in the prior month of measurement on the price of oil and gasoline at the pump, which is obviously, given what you just said, turned around and gone back up. So maybe we'll get an equally bad reading this next coming month.
Yeah. Bob, what did you make of the congressional testimony, not to mention the meeting minutes from Fed Chair Warsh?
Simple. They're going to fight inflation. As everybody knows, the Fed has a dual mandate: keep inflation low, keep unemployment low. And right now they're not so worried about unemployment because it is low, and they need to get inflation there too. So the new Fed chair, despite all the noise about him being a dove, he's come out hawkish, got to fight inflation. Yeah.
I mean, Bob, the earnings have just been stellar. And so where do we go from here as we head into the next earnings season?
I wish you could answer that question because I can't. That's one of the dilemmas. The earnings have been off the charts, and what do we do from here? What's the encore? We've had several quarters now where earnings have been much better than expected, and so far this second quarter reports are coming in the same way. But how do we follow it up? How much better can it get?
Yeah. Bob, where do you expect the growth to come from if this market does have another leg up? Is it going to continue to be concentrated in tech?
Tech will certainly have to play a part because it's such a big piece of the market, Rob. Setting new records is this percentage of the market, both here in the U.S. and globally. Now, other sectors will need to come along, too. You need consumers that are doing okay to buy all that tech, as well as CapEx from corporations. So the broad-based economy that we're mostly enjoying today needs to continue.
Bob, this re-escalation, I mean, as you said in your Dahl's deliberations, there's just no obvious off-ramp here. So, what happens between now and the midterms as we continue to see this play out?
Great question. The Iranian government, most particularly the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, they have every interest in things being on Election Day in November the same as they are today. That is skirmish here, skirmish there, keeping the price of oil a bit on the firm side. So they're playing the long game, hoping to hand President Trump an embarrassment.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we'll certainly continue to keep an eye on it. Bob, as always, we appreciate your thoughts.
Have a great week.
All right. That's Bob Dahl. He's CEO and CIO at Crossmark Global Investments. Let's try to get to one, maybe two more phone calls here before we round out the broadcast. Davenport, Iowa. Mary, go ahead.
Hi. Thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
We moved my mother into, my sisters and I have 4 sisters, moved my mother into, right now she's an independent living in a senior residential situation. I'm now managing all of her finances. She I think has a spending problem, and we're concerned. We're trying to show her that she cannot continue spending at that level because if she's in very good health, she's 90, and in very good health, no serious health problems. And I've even shown her, if she has dementia, early stage dementia. I said, Mom, if you have to go into memory care, your money is only going to last about 4 years. But she doesn't respond well to me or any of my sisters when we talk with her about her spending. And the issue is that she's more of a collector than anything. So
Yes.
she likes to collect books, things recommended on Moody. She loves to collect sewing notions, and she's building up another big inventory that we won't be able to later turn into cash. And it's just difficult to know how to approach her. I'm just wondering if there's any advice you can offer.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I know how hard this is, Mary, but I'm glad you're leaning into it. It's an important conversation, and it's as much a family conversation as a financial one. And so I think it's important really to lead with concern rather than control. And I know that's not your heart to control here. You really are genuinely concerned. So I might start by just letting her know that your goal isn't to tell her how to spend her money. It's really to make sure that she has enough for the rest of her life. And so I think it's important to be, first of all, prayed up before you go into a conversation. Second, pick a calm, private time to talk. I would lead with questions rather than any kind of finger pointing. And again, I'm not getting that sense that that's kind of your approach here. So don't get me wrong. But I think just to underscore the point, maybe you'd lead with, hey, Mom, how are you feeling about your finances? And have you thought about how long your savings may need to last? And I think offering some assistance, and perhaps assistance that's not tied to other family members, including you. And so, for instance, one of the things I'd be willing to offer here, just to be of help here, is a certified Christian financial counselor. And these are typically men and women that are retired. They have a unique skill set in this area of financial management. Often, they've been in the financial services industry, but their ministry now is just to come alongside God's people to encourage them, to pray with them, but then also to help them see clearly what they have and what they, need to do in terms of a plan moving forward. And perhaps having that independent third party that could come alongside and just help her think about, okay, let's look at your income. Let's look at your expenses. Let's look at the last, 90 days or maybe the last 6 months. And let me help you develop a budget based on what you have spent, and then help you understand how long that may last into the future if you continue at this rate. We'd be happy to provide that. I think if there are concerns about memory or diminished financial capacity, I think it's appropriate to begin to talk as soon as you can about the legal tools that would be used there. Because if you sat with an elder care attorney, they would be quickly talking about durable financial powers of attorney, where if your mom's willing, she can appoint someone she trusts to help manage her finances if she's unable to do so. A revocable living trust would make it easier for someone to manage assets if she's incapacitated. Not to mention it simplifies estate administration once she passes. Long-term care and Medicaid planning, an estate plan review, those kinds of things, healthcare directives, are really important. And if your mom is still mentally sharp, I think, the first step is this loving conversation, and then a meeting, with either an elder care attorney or perhaps a certified Christian financial counselor who can just bring clarity to the situation and help her gain an appreciation for, how her money may run out. And if the Lord tarries and she is in good health, her biggest risk in this season of life is something called longevity risk, where she outlives her money. And I think there's a kind and loving way to help point that out, and hopefully, Lord willing, in a way that she receives it. But what are your thoughts on that?
I already do have a power of attorney. She does have a revocable trust.
Great.
And all of her assets are in that. And so we carefully, created an amount that she would be drawing out of her investments every month. But that's only for right now. Those costs have gone up, and they will go up considerably if she needs greater care level.
Yeah.
So, but I do think, and maybe going back to the attorney that helped with her revocable trust and the durable power of attorney and all of those things is the way to go. Maybe I could start with them. They might do that for us.
Yeah. And so what I'm hearing is she's not going beyond what you all decided would be kind of her monthly income, but you're anticipating potentially the need for further and much more expensive care, and that those future care costs are what could deplete her assets in a hurry. Is that right?
Right now, there's a concern that she's building a stockpile that we can't convert later to cash. Yeah. So that's a concern. But yes, I think the level of care that she needs might increase significantly.
Yeah.
So I think maybe we'll start with the attorney that helped us with those first steps.
Yes. No, I think that's probably. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, they're not a financial advisor per se.
Right. Well, if it would be helpful, I'd be happy to offer someone who could, help her pull together, or you and her current income and assets. And, that's what would allow you to determine, based on the current run rate, how long will they last? And then you could make some assumptions about what it might go up to and what that would mean. And then you would just try to create a sustainable withdrawal and spending plan and reduce unnecessary spending now to try to preserve assets for the future. That attorney, may want to talk about Medicaid planning to understand what options may be available if she eventually needs long-term care. And, apart from that, we just need her to do her part in trying to preserve this as long as she can. Listen, if we can help with any of this along the way, Mary, don't hesitate to reach out. Thanks for your call. Faith and Finance Live is a partnership between Moody Radio and Faith Fi. Come back and join us tomorrow. We'll see you then. Bye-bye.